The ceasefire brokered by Russia between Armenia and Azerbaijan to try and end a flare-up in fighting over the last 2 weeks has been breached within its first 24 hours. The two countries have a long-running dispute over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan has now accused Armenia of a war crime after an apartment block in the city of Ganja was shelled.
Here's what's left of her neighbourhood in Ganja, Azerbaijan's second largest city. Far from the front line, but not far enough. This is just off the main street. No sign of military targets. We saw remnants of what Baku says was a ballistic missile. It's accusing Armenia of a war crime.
Well, this was clearly a civilian target. Apartment blocks, flats where people were living. There's bedding and blankets and mattresses strewn among the rubble here. The attack happened at about 2 a.m. Now, this is supposed to be a ceasefire, but it looks more like all-out war.
Fleeing from tear gas and stun grenades. Similar scenes of chaos and panic across the capital. Scores of people detained in the most violent police crackdown seen in weeks. Several thousand protesters dodged police, who used water cannon and stun grenades. Tackled and beaten with batons by masked officers, others seen injured and dazed on the ground. More than 13,000 people have been detained in weeks of protests. They say the presidential election in early August was rigged. They're risking it all to demand President Alexander Lukashenko's resignation.
On to this now. Police Minister Cele says he's saddened by the arrest of senior police officials. A Deputy National Police Commissioner was arrested for fraud, corruption, theft and money laundering today. Her arrest is related to an almost 200 million rand tender for police emergency warning equipment. She joins a number of others who were previously arrested, including former Police Commissioner Khomotso Phahlane.
It's a sad feeling, Bongo. No doubt about it. With all the arrests, especially the latest arrest has arrested quite several senior police, the generals.
A liquor store has been looted, other shops damaged today during protests in Durban's Reservoir Hills. Several vehicles have also been set alight. The reason for this? Well, it's alleged that residents from the Quarry Road informal settlement are angry over poor service delivery as well as a lack of toilets.
Very violent and chaotic morning, Jeremy. You'll see that this road that I'm on now, the bottom end of Mountbatten, there is some traffic that's having to be diverted because much further down, there is still a small group that's gathered here. Now, this is despite police saying to us that they've already arrested 10 of these rioters that have caused all of this destruction around this area since the early hours of this morning. There is still a group that is now protesting. They've been marching up and down this road, singing as they go along, in some ways also taunting police.
After 5 days of demonstrations that in some cases turned violent, protesters are savoring their victory. Protests began 6 days ago after a man was allegedly shot and killed by members of the police unit called the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, or SARS. The police chief said dissolving the unit, whose members have further tarnished the image of the police, was necessary for a force that is in serious need of changes.
The Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the Nigeria Police, otherwise known as SARS, is hereby dissolved across all formations, the 36 state police commands, and the Federal Capital Territory, where they currently exist.
They're known around the world for their red serge dress uniform. Members of the RCMP are strictly guided by a uniform and dress manual. Their appearances are now the focus of a controversial internal memo about members wearing a thin blue line.
My reaction was one of surprise and concern.
On Friday, Mounties across the country received a directive saying in part, the subdued flag with a blue bar has become widespread in North America as a sign of solidarity and support for police. While this may be common, it is not an approved symbol and is not to be worn on our uniform.
Tight restrictions were put in place to reassure Lithuanians as they went to cast their ballots in Sunday's first round of parliamentary elections. The spread of COVID-19 and what the government's doing about it, along with virus-related soaring unemployment, have been the main issues in the election. The governing four-party coalition found itself facing a stiff challenge from the opposition. In pre-vote opinion polls, the centrist Farmers and Greens Party, a grouping that leads Prime Minister Saulius Skvernelis's governing coalition, was neck and neck with the centre-right Homeland Union. With support roughly 15% for both and 15 other parties on the ballot, another coalition is inevitable, but its makeup is uncertain.
Tundu Lissu says he's worried about his safety while campaigning. He's also concerned about the independence of the Electoral Commission that barred him from campaigning for 7 days last week. Electoral officials said his conduct while on the campaign trail had been polarizing. Lissu recently returned to Tanzania from Belgium to run for president. He left 3 years ago when he was seriously injured after being repeatedly shot by unidentified gunmen. He's told Al Jazeera he does not believe that the election at the end of the month will be free, fair or transparent.
It has the largest Muslim population in Western Europe, more than 5 million people in France. But outside the Grand Mosque in Paris, opinions about a proposed new law by President Emmanuel Macron are loud and clear. It's one they feel is stigmatizing their religion. He's gone too far, says one man. He should let Islam be. It's being called an anti-separatism law, part of Macron's belief that some members of the Muslim population have become alienated from the French state. Many see the bill, due to be presented to lawmakers in December, as a direct attack on French Muslims. The proposal includes stricter financial controls for mosques, a certification program for French imams, limited homeschooling, and making sure state-funded Islamic organizations sign a secular charter.
Well, beachgoers are being warned to be on the lookout for snakes as mating season gets underway. Eastern brown snakes have been spotted at suburban beaches, with sightings expected to increase as summer approaches.
A scary sight on the beach at Seaford.
Decent size. Oh my gosh, yeah.
The giant eastern brown snake caught on camera soaking up the weekend sun, one of several recent sightings at beaches across Adelaide as mating season begins.
Just about to walk that way too.
We've got a lot of eastern brown snakes that live along the cliff faces all along the metropolitan area of the beaches, so it's not uncommon.
Mr Burrell says his catching service received 20 calls for help from Flagstaff Hill to Williamstown on Saturday alone, and he's expecting snake sightings to rise over the next few weeks.